rust. The oil industry infrastructure runs on stainless steel. The maritime proverb says rust never sleeps. Most oil rigs and the pumping and the refinery production is past their use-by date. Okay? Steel starts rusting on day one. The cost of replacing all of that, all those oil wells and the refineries, the cost of buying the steel and paying the engineers to make those again and replace them will be greater than fighting World War II or rebuilding Europe afterwards. It's called the Marshall Plan. Okay? Although Australia's got more steel than iron ore, there may not be enough steel in the world to replace all of that infrastructure that was built in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. We are facing big challenges for trying to rebuild that capacity. The workforce is ageing. Okay, there's not many people joining what's seen as a dirty, relatively old economy. Okay, teenagers these days are studying IT and marketing, law, media entertainment. Okay, they're not going into oil engineering. Projects are cancelled due to low prices, the crash of oil. But what that does, the low oil price that we've got now cancels the projects. Okay, oil shale projects are being shelved, ultra deep water drilling. Why bother? It's not profitable because the price of oil is so low. Okay? But demand stays the same. Okay, so what happens is reduced supply when the reservoir capacity is falling. So demand stays the same, but we're not producing any more. We're not investing in increasing capacity for when that high demand hits. So when we get to the time when the price of oil goes back to $140 a barrel, we'll be back to where we were 2 years ago. Sit down, boys. Another problem for the transport industry and oil is instability. Oil funds regimes that we don't particularly like. Saddam Hussein, the Venezuelans, the Iranians, they don't really like what we do. And yet we're paying them every time we fill up with fuel. The Somalis have figured out that it's very profitable to hijack an oil tanker. And there's not much the US Marines can do about it because you're sitting on a massive bomb. And if they try and rescue the hostages, they're likely to blow everybody sky high. So they pay. And all that does is encourages them to do another one. And as you can see there, the Suez Canal takes gas and oil to Europe, but the alternative is to go to America and you send it down under Africa, and that's where the Somali pirates are, right on the Horn. So the majority of America's oil supplies comes right through that piracy-infested water. And the cost of securing the oil is very high. 4,500 US troops have died in Iraq today, not counting all the civilians and the billions of dollars they're spending. I've often said that if you put the cost of invading Iraq into battery technology, we'd all be driving cars that do 500 kilometres on a single charge, and you can recharge in 5 minutes from your mobile phone. Where's the money going? It's going into oil. What about hydrogen? We've heard a lot about hydrogen fuel cells, but you lose a lot of oil. The maths that I've seen, people have different calculations that I think we talked about this morning, that's fine, but to get hydrogen, it doesn't occur naturally. So you have to make it out of natural gas or water. And if you make it out of natural gas, that's the cheapest way, 100% of the natural gas, to produce the hydrogen, you lose about 20% in the production. Then you've got to liquefy it and transport it in a boat or a truck or a pipeline. That consumes another 10%. You then, when you get to the hydrogen refuelling station, the liquid has to be evaporated back and compressed so you can put it in your hydrogen tank. That consumes another 10% of the resource, and the fuel cell itself is about 50% efficient. So the total energy lost is over 70% from well to wheel. Okay, now that the 25% efficiency, the Toyota Prius is more efficient than that using a gasoline engine. So there are serious doubts about whether a fuel cell using hydrogen from whatever method that we make the hydrogen will be the solution to our transport needs. To make hydrogen out of water using electrolysis is incredibly power intense. Okay? To drive the same amount of kilometres in 2004 the UK would need 67 new nuclear reactors to electrolyse enough hydrogen out of water to compress, to transport, to pump into fuel cells at 50% efficiency to drive the same number of kilometres. Okay? The USA would need 433 new nuclear reactors to do the same amount of kilometres that they do on a hydrogen fuel cell. Okay? Great news for Australia. We're the only ones with the uranium to fund it, to drive it all. But to do it in solar or wind, you would need to cover the entire country of Wales or North Dakota with solar panels back to back. Okay, so there's nobody living underneath, it's just all solar or wind turbines. Okay? Lack of infrastructure. We're going to say today about electricity. We've got the infrastructure in place already, but the cost of installing a hydrogen refuelling infrastructure in the middle of a global financial crisis, who's got the money to do that? And maybe the Russians, maybe the Chinese, but they're not in, it's not in their interest to help us. Okay, what about the crash test results? Does anybody remember Timothy McVeigh? Anybody remember? What did Timothy McVeigh do? He blew up the Oklahoma Federal Building. That's right. Remember that? Blew the whole face off the building. Yeah. Okay? The bomb he used was about a quarter the destructive capacity of the hydrogen tank in your car. Okay, so you're driving along in a hydrogen fuel tank, you've just fueled up in the cell, a drunk driver in a Humvee comes across the intersection.
Big hole in the ground.
Okay. Now there's these guys called Al-Qaeda. You're telling me that you're going to spend money to build an infrastructure that lets them have cheap access to explosive materials and a highly mobile car? Please. But there are serious questions about hydrogen. Joe Romm worked for the Clinton administration doing hydrogen research and development. He's published a book called The Hype About Hydrogen. And his quote is fairly self-explanatory. It's the last alternative you would use if all else failed. And unfortunately, they're plowing money into it, I think, because our mentality is used to filling up our car at a petrol station. And because we're largely sheep, if we just swap petrol for hydrogen, we're still filling up at a station. And the government can tax it, and the business goes on as usual, and the oil companies...
You can have plans for your own house, though, fill it up.
That's true. All of those are true. Desmond, you just sit down and ask money, please.
And as for the destructive power of hydrogen, you only have to carry a quarter as amount of hydrogen to natural gas. And it has slightly more energy. It has no more energy than the gas tank blowing up the car.
All of those factors are true, but there was a story in the paper in Queensland just the other day.
I've never seen a gas tank blow up in a car destroyed anything.
Well, the guy watched his family burn to death because the LPG system wasn't installed properly.
It didn't blow up.
He got his boss to do it. We're splitting hairs, but...
If you smash in the back of the car and spread the petrol over the car, it'd be worse than gas.
Okay. I see your point. What about biofuel? That's another alternative that's suggested. So what you're going to do is take food from this starving African kid and pump it in your Humvee. Okay? Biofuel consumes almost as much energy producing it as it gives to the car. It's very energy intensive as well. And there's just not enough land to grow enough biofuel to put into a diesel Humvee or Toyota Prius to drive the same number of kilometres that we're driving. Okay? And the transport in air travel, ships on the sea bringing cheap food from China to our supermarkets. There are serious questions about whether biofuel can... It certainly has an application and it can fill a niche, like the Brazilians are using biofuel, but on a global scale, there's not much that can replace gasoline.